Hey there, welcome to the DFS Build NBA edition. I'm Kevin Roberts, getting ready to go over this two-game slate for NBA DFS at DraftKings. Although it's not really your conventional two-game slate, it's a two-day slate. I did say not that long ago that we are done with the two-game slates, and really we are, because we're just not going to have the Eastern Conference and Western Conference finals on the same day anymore. It's just the way it is. They're going to stagger them. First game is tonight on Tuesday, and the second game is on Wednesday, and we're just going to keep going like that, and hopefully we get a lot of these two-day slates so we can still have a two-game slate and have some kind of normalcy. And then obviously at some point, once they get spread out more and or we get to the NBA finals, we'll just do showdown videos until the NBA season is officially over. But for now, let's take advantage of it and hopefully win some cash. If anything I do here does help you out, please hit the like button and also subscribe to the channel. Both those things help us out quite a bit, and just a nice little throwback from you if we do indeed help you. We can help you further if you come join our Discord and hit up our Patreon, just $5.99 to get all of our picks and advice, and communicate with us in our premium Patreon as well. All right, so let's get into it here. There's not any ownership out yet, but I ran the tool here, and it's kind of aligned with like a lot of the picks that I'm liking, which means two things. Number one, I like this slate, and I think we're heading in a positive direction here. But at the same time, we might want to find a couple spots to change it up, because I don't want to have my lineup duped in a two-game slate. But the way we go about this, we go position by position, highlighting the top plays, and just try to push you, nudge you in the right direction. So at point guard, we have a lot of options up top. We got Anthony Edwards, we got SGA, we got Jalen Brunson, and we got Tyrese Haliburton. So, top stars for each of their respective teams, basically. I don't have a problem with any of these guys. Right now, Jalen Brunson feels like the best value to me, 9K against the Pacers. Pacers are a pretty good matchup. He's not the Knicks guy I want to play on this slate, but I think at 9K, given the usage he's had, he's certainly a guy that's very much on my radar. The usage has been obscene. His usage took a hit in the last game against Boston, but other than that, he's mostly at 30% or higher in just about all of his games. So we just know he's going to come down and score and, set up the offense and stuff. So he looks really good at 9K. Tyrese Haliburton's got a tougher matchup and a worse projection. So I think if you're going Brunson versus Haliburton as far as just straight up plays, I prefer Brunson. But that also might lower his ownership. I think there's an argument either way. There's an argument for, Brunson's got the better projection. He's got the higher usage rate. He's been the better, more consistent performer throughout the playoffs. So that might make Brunson a little bit more owned. But at the same time, Haliburton's cheaper. So if you want to just save some cash and get a solid projecting player who does have a ceiling, Haliburton is very appealing. We'll just have to see where the ownership lies. Right now, I'm leaning Brunson. Ownership be damned. That said, it's not that much to go get Anthony Edwards or SGA. So I do actually prefer those guys. And I'm hoping that their elevated salary plus a tougher matchup in general in that series. Like OKC's got the best defense in the league. Minnesota's not that far behind. Like the Timberwolves have an applied 104 total here. And OKC is only at 111.5. So I just naturally, I think people might flock to the Pacers Knicks series a little bit more. We'll see where the ownership falls. But if the ownership is going to be close, or it's going to be tilted towards Brunson and Haliburton, I have a lot of interest in going and getting Ant for $500 more than Brunson, or SGA for $1,000 more. If you're looking just purely at projections, Brunson is, to me, the best point guard play on the slate. If you want to get an edge and you want to look at ceiling and ownership, I do think Ant and SGA are going to be very, very appealing. And what I do there is just going to depend on where ownership falls. That said, in a vacuum right now, the top point guard play to me is Brunson. There's a lot of value here too, which is always nice. Andrew Nembhard is going to get big minutes, decent projection for 5.5K. You can use him at shooting guard as well. So I do like him. I like the punts here too. I'm finding that I do want to get to a couple punts on this slate just because I think Ant and SGA are very appealing. And if I'm doing a lot of lineups, I'm definitely going to want to get to them a lot, especially depending on where the ownership is. But Conley at 4.3K, he played a good amount to end that last series, 26 minutes or more in each of his last three games. Had a really good last game there against the Warriors. Usage is not incredibly high, so he's got to be super efficient. He's got to actually be productive, so he doesn't get benched in favor of Dante DiVincenzo. But these guys are basically the same price. They basically have the same projection. Dante still played a ton overall in the series. He had foul trouble in that this game here where he only had 3 fantasy points, but otherwise he's good for 25 plus minutes off the bench. So if the ownership comes in super hard on Conley, who I think Conley's a better play on FanDuel, Conley's still a fine play for value. He just has a really low ceiling, and the floor isn't very good either. So I just think, especially like DiVincenzo is going to not face the brunt of that OKC defense coming off the bench. So I do think DiVincenzo is a little bit more interesting, and I think if the ownership kind of reflects that and DiVincenzo gets overlooked, I'm even more into him. Alex Caruso, like if he's mega chalk, I'm definitely going to go away from him a little bit, but on paper, he's getting really good minutes. I mean, they used him like on Jokic in the last game. So they definitely want him out there for his defense. He definitely can hit some shots. He can get defensive stats. So at 4.1K, I'm all about Alex Caruso. Don't have a problem with that. I certainly think he's a better play than Conley or DiVincenzo right now. Certainly has a better projection, and he's a little bit cheaper. But if that's going to make his ownership be heavy, then I certainly have no problem going to Conley or DiVincenzo. And I could even leverage the Caruso ownership with Cason Wallace at 3.4K, which obviously saves me, $1,000, almost $1,000 too. The projection is not that far off. So all these value guys are in play. Just depends on what you want to do with your lineup. I don't hate TJ McConnell at 3.8K, good per minute guy off the bench. And I think if you're going to go punting with Cason Wallace, like you certainly could argue for TJ if Cason ends up carrying ownership. All right, over at shooting guard, we can use Anthony Edwards there. All those other guys we talked about, the point guards, they're only point guard eligible, so you could certainly build a case for Ant being a little bit more valuable as far as positional versatility goes. Massive ceiling. He looks amazing. Mikal Bridges, just based off of minutes alone, like he's going to be pretty appealing. He projects pretty well here. 6.2K, don't mind that. Usage has been a little bit inconsistent like in the past series, but this is a way better matchup than we were seeing, against Boston. Like this is the Pacers. This is not Boston. Let me actually pull up. Let me pull up his stats here to see how he was doing against the Pacers on the season. 25 fantasy points per game across 3 games. Not amazing. We know he doesn't have like the highest ceiling in the world, and he can have a really low floor if his shots are not falling. But I think the price is nice. If you want to land on Mikal Bridges, I don't have a problem with it. I'm personally not really getting there right now, just because I think I want to go get as many of these, studs as I can, and they're all the pricing is pretty soft. So like I feel like we can get there pretty comfortably. And there's a couple other guys that I really like that I haven't really gotten to yet. So I don't know if I'm going to land a lot in that 6K range. I think Andrew Nembhard at 5.5K is a better value. I think Aaron Nesmith at 5K is a better value. So those guys are pretty interesting. Of that trio, Aaron Nesmith, just because he's cheaper than those guys, I think he makes sense. He projects about the same as Nembhard, $500 less, small forward eligible. It's just, to me, it's an easy call. Now, if the ownership is heavy on Nesmith because of that, certainly we can entertain paying all the way up to Mikal Bridges or just pivoting to Nembhard at shooting guard over Nesmith. But right now, I think Nesmith is just the best small forward play, dollar for dollar. We can use Dante DiVincenzo here. We can use Alex Caruso at shooting guard, obviously. So those guys look good. Dort has been losing minutes in the playoffs. That's with Caruso in there. That's with Cason Wallace getting burned when he's hitting his shots. So he's not like locked into this massive role. Obviously, he's out there for mostly his defense. So I still think he's viable at 4K. Just he's like, usually you could feel pretty good about his minutes, and they weren't great last series. So we'll see what happens. I would imagine they'd want to use him and Caruso to stop Ant. So we'll see. I think at 4K, if the Caruso ownership is heavy, you can certainly entertain a pivot to Dort. Just a lot riskier than normal because we know he's not a super explosive offensive player. Benedict Mathurin is another really good pivot away from Caruso. We'll see where the ownership falls. Like right now, the minutes and general projection isn't like super inviting, but 3.7K for a guy who can explode as a scorer, I don't hate it. Only 11 minutes last game. Don't pay any mind to the game before that because he got ejected. But he had been getting a role in that series with Cleveland. And Mathurin is just really like nicely priced here. He crushed against the Knicks on the season, 37 fantasy points per game across 3 meetings. So it's not really a matchup we should be afraid of for him. It's really just about the minutes. Can we trust him to get more than 15 minutes off the bench? And then when he's out there, is he actually hitting shots? I think in terms of value and like if you want to go get a lot of good bodies on the slate, I think Mathurin looks like a really good play. I would imagine he's going to be owned. If he's like 70% owned, we could certainly pivot to Kason Wallace. We could consider Miles McBride or Naw as pivots, or we could just pay up to like Dort or Caruso. I always want to play with that ownership. If any single guy is going to be 70% owned on a slate, I always want to consider fading or at least being a little bit underweight, just because it gives you massive, instant leverage on a tiny slate. You don't want to dupe, and you don't want to be locked into a guy that has the ability to easily fail. Like if it's 70%, like we talked about this not that long ago, if it's 70% Jamal Murray and he's like 7K and he has a massive ceiling and a nice floor, I'm okay with doing that. But if it's like 7K Bobby Portis or Alex Caruso, guys that are kind of volatile and don't have massive usage, well, Bobby Portis sometimes does. But the point is, like, if they're like super volatile and mega owned, I'm okay with getting away from that. All right. Let me get a quick drink of water. Small forward looks pretty good. Jalen Williams is the play here if you can afford him, 7.4K. Not really the best matchup in the world, obviously, with the Minnesota here. But, he did well against them during the regular season, 40 fantasy points across 4 games. Don't have a problem with getting him at all. Just kind of depends on what else you want to do with OKC. Like, are you loading up with SGA? Do you want Chet? And like what other guys do you like on the slate? But 7.4K for Jalen Williams is too cheap. I feel like his projection's a little bit light. Like I think he's going to, hit that pretty easily. So I do want to get to him quite a bit at 7.4. I would imagine he's going to be Josh Hart at 6.7 also feels a little bit light. Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby are a little bit cheaper than him. Like OG Anunoby is a really good value if we can bank on the usage being there. But look at how he did against Boston. Like obviously a way tougher series. Really came alive in the last game, 45 fantasy points. But beyond that, like he really struggled for many games there. Just because he does not consistently have high usage. When you're competing with guys like Jalen Brunson and Cat, like just there's no guarantee he's going to get enough shots to actually hit. And he's usually not going to do a whole lot else beyond score. Same goes for Mikal Bridges. I do think like the ownership, though, based on the projection, might flock to Bridges. So OG does stand out here. But Josh Hart is just a safe play. If you want the safe play, Josh Hart's a value, triple-double upside. I feel like this series benefits him a lot more than the Boston series did. And, 45 fantasy points across 3 meetings with them. He certainly had plenty of success. I just think Josh Hart's a really good play. But if you want to save money, go down to OG at a possibly way lower ownership. I do think that's appealing. Jaden McDaniels, just a pure minutes play at 5.7K. Plus, you can play him at power forward. I love that. Look at these minutes. 37, 42, 40, 41. Not a high usage guy. Not like a super high ceiling, especially when Minnesota's at full strength. But give me all those minutes, baby. I love that. So only 5.7K still. Obviously OKC is not a good matchup, but OKC is going to be worried about stopping Ant and slowing down, Julius Randle. Like they're not really, the priority is not stopping Jaden McDaniels. So if Jaden McDaniels gets a bunch of open looks, which he probably will in this series, if he knocks him down, he's going to be a smash. So I like him a lot at 5.7. I think his price and usage might keep his ownership in check. We'll see. And if that's the case, I'll be very, very over on him. All right, I said I love Aaron Nesmith at 5K. I'm okay on Dort and Mathurin. I'm going to play the ownership game between, guys like that, Dort, Mathurin, Caruso, Kason range. Whatever guy is the most owned in that little area of value, I probably won't be on. And then I'll try to target some of the other guys that, just are kind of getting overlooked. Aaron Wiggins at 3.1K is a little bit interesting because it is a 2-game slate. And there's always the possibility that, these game ones get out of control. Like very often, game one goes to the team that is not supposed to win. So maybe Minnesota comes in here and just blows, the door off the hinges here. Surprises OKC. And if that happens, Aaron Wiggins could get a lot of extra burn. But I don't really want to bet on that. So not really doing that down low. At power forward, Julius Randle had an amazing series against the Warriors. He had 45-plus fantasy points in each of his last 4 games, getting monster minutes. He's initiating offense. He's rebounding. He's scoring. He's playing very confident basketball, and he remains way too cheap. So OKC overall is a very strong defensive team, but on the inside, they're not always as scary. So Julius Randle can definitely get a lot of rebounds here, and I think he can have some success inside or in the mid-range. So he looks good. I think probably I'd be picking between Julius and Jalen and perhaps Cat. Like one of those guys is probably going to be the odd man out. Certainly, you could go the more balanced route and just like fade SGA and Ant and just load up on all these just rock solid plays from like, Brunson on down to Siakam or something. But I do think those guys are also all going to be owned. So we might have to do something where we, go very underweight or fade one or even more of these guys. Plus, can't play everybody in one lineup, so it just is what it is. But as things stand, Julius Randle looks really good. I don't mind him at all. I think if I had to pick one between him and Jalen Williams, I like Jalen Williams more. And, of course, you can save $1.5K from Julius and go down and get Pascal Siakam. Like, I don't really like playing Siakam that much because his ceiling just tends to be kind of low. But obviously, this is the Eastern Conference Finals. He's only 6.5K. He projects okay. He has not had a lot of success against the Knicks, only 29 fantasy points per game across 3 meetings with them on the year. That's not really going to scare me away, especially if a lot of the ownership is going to Julius and Jalen and even Josh Hart or Chet. Siakam at 6.5K is going to suddenly start looking pretty interesting. Don't know ownership yet, but 6.5 Siakam, I would imagine, is going to garner ownership. So if that is the case, I have no problem going the other way, kind of like just the opposite of what I said. Like Chet at 6.9, we know he has a massive ceiling. Obviously, the matchup with Minnesota is not great, but he had 46 fantasy points in Game 3 there against Denver, 40 fantasy points in Game 6, 42 in Game 2, and then 46 in Game 3. So he certainly had some success in that series. That was an easier series, so it remains to be seen how well he does here. But he projects, about the same as Hart and Siakam. So if Chet is going to go overlooked, I love his ceiling, and I would be all over that. Already talked about OG McDaniels. Naz Reid remains a really good value at 4.8K. Much like Dante DiVincenzo, he's going to get 20-plus minutes off the bench. That allows him to have a solid usage rate, and he's not going to face, as stiff of an OKC defense as the starters will, the majority of the time. Obviously, it's the playoffs. Most of the top players are going to play the whole game, so it's not as relevant. But 4.8K for him and power forward eligible, I think he's a pretty good value. Not really into him as much as I normally would be, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But before I do, Obi Toppin at 3.6K, I think he's also a solid value. In that Kason Wallace range, I think I like him a little bit better than Kason Wallace, especially if Kason's going to carry ownership. But right now, Obi, when I ran the labs, he was in the optimal. So I'm assuming other people are going to see that and his ownership's going to tick up. But he's only going to get like 15 minutes off the bench, and he's going to have to hit pretty well. So it's a risk at 3.6K, but I do like him. I think him and Kason are kind of the same play. And if the ownership goes towards Kason or somebody else and Obi does get overlooked, very, very interesting value for me. My favorite play of the entire slate is Cat. 7.7K, just way too cheap. I know he hasn't really gotten there in the playoffs, but Boston's like a brutal matchup. Like, that is not a fun spot at all. And the Indiana Pacers are a very fun matchup for bigs. 54 fantasy points per game across 3 meetings with Indy. The Cavs bigs had success against Miles Turner and Siakam inside, and Cat can certainly have success. He definitely did during the regular season. I fully expect him to throughout this series. 7.7K for his projection and ceiling. It's way too cheap. My guess is that people will see that and will agree, and Cat will be pretty owned, but I don't really care. I just think he's a really good play. Julius Randle is fine. I prefer Cat. Miles Turner at 6.1K, that's a really good value. I don't really want to target Cat with Miles Turner that badly. But there's no doubt about it. Miles Turner at 6.1 is a solid value, and he was okay against the Knicks when he faced them during the regular season. If you want to go there at 6.1, don't have a problem with it. Solid projection. I hope he's chalky, though, because I want to go do something else, and that is going to get Rudy Gobert at 5.3K. The Warriors like to go small a lot, so that kind of curbed his ceiling. He didn't play over 30 minutes a single time in that series. Same thing happened a lot of the time against the Lakers, and then in that last game against LA, they're just like, screw it. And they just played him anyways, and he just crushed. In this series, OKC is going to play Chet and Hartenstein. So, Rudy is going to be out there more than he has been in most of the playoff games so far. And when he's been out there, he's actually been really good. So whether it's a block party, whether it's putbacks, whether it's roasting OKC on the boards, which I fully expect him to do, he feels way too cheap at 5.3. So right now I am looking at personally a center build. If we get to the point where Cat and Rudy together is like mega chalk, I'll entertain the idea of getting away from one of those guys. But honestly, I think you can get different in a lot of different spots. So that just feels to me like the best way to start building on this slate. I do not mind Hartenstein at 5'9". They're going to need a size against Rudy. Like I said, I do like Chet if those other guys in the same range are going to garner more ownership. But right now at center, it's Cat and Rudy for me for the most part. All right, that's going to do it for the position by position breakdown. Hopefully that helps you out a little bit. I am just one person with an opinion on many different players on a 2-game slate. The reality is you should trust projections. You should trust your lineup tool to a degree. Like I like to mess around with my personal preferences and then run the tool and then based off of ownership, I will make a couple of adjustments based, after it produces the top lineups. If it gives me like way too much of one guy, I'll drop his ownership by 20 or 30%. If it gives me none of a guy I really like, I'll go over his ownership by 10 or 20%. Or if it gives me all chalky guys, I'll pivot off of one or two plays that are chalky and try to just get different a little bit. And I've personally found success with that strategy, and I think everybody else can as well. But this also gives you a little bit of nuance as far as like which guys stand out and why, and which guys might be better left avoided. That said, it is a 2-game slate. You kind of have to have a perfect lineup to get a takedown on a tiny slate like this. So just roll with what you think makes the most sense. But hopefully this does help you out. If it does, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. If you want extra advice in our personalized chat in Discord, core plays for the slate, all that stuff, hit up our Patreon, just $5.99 for the month. And you get access to more than just NBA DFS. You get our MLB DFS picks and stacks, UFL picks, MMA picks. UFL and MMA have been flames. Like our core plays have been awesome. We got burned last week because Bryce Perkins randomly didn't play. Not sure what the hell that was about. And also one of our core plays for MMA, the fight got canceled. So you can't really do anything about that. But beyond that, like we've been crushing in those. So for that alone, if you want to get an edge on a sport that you really don't play that often, MMA and UFL are two that you definitely can do that in. So come in and join us, and we'll have a lot of fun and hopefully win some cash. All right. Thanks for watching, and good luck.